is on the road making content for you with his podcast in a bag.
Hello, my name is Ben, and welcome to the Too Vague Podcast. One word, two hosts, stories, trivia, and video games. I've got a special show for you today, and actually the next 4 episodes. I probably mentioned it on a show or two that I was going to PAX this year, Penny Arcade Expo in Seattle, like I do every year with the show. This year is no exception. I had 4 full days, so it's going to make for a lot of content for you. I'm going to try and release these closer together than I normally do, if at all possible. Instead of delaying any further, let's just get right into the stuff that I saw. I arrived in Seattle ahead of time just so I could kind of get my bearings before the show. I arrived and then had a day to rest, and then the day before the show started, I picked up my press pass, and on my way back to my hotel, I wanted to do something new to start off my quote-unquote vacation. So I decided to try my first escape room. There was one that I saw last year, and I wasn't quite sure how it worked. I decided, since it was still around, to check it out this year, and it is called the Tomb Raider Experience. It is a very immersive, part theater, part escape room. You get paired up with a person who is in your quote-unquote party, who's more of a guide kind of figure. I went later at night, so there was just me and this guide, Alex. All the guides are named Alex, by the way. Alex helped me out since I was by myself through this escape room, and it was a lot of fun. Now, it's not something that I would necessarily go out of my way to do, but it was like playing a video game in real life. You had to figure out the puzzles and then do various manipulations of things in order to move on to the next room. This one is a little different, I'm told, because instead of it just being an escape room, you have a time frame. So the experience end to end is about 90 minutes. So the time you have in each puzzle room is about 20 minutes. So once your time is expired, Lara Croft, who appears every once in a while on a TV or above you or whatever, she lets you off the hook and lets you go to the next room. I want to say I got 11 of the 16 or 17 puzzles, which is not bad for a first timer. Like I said, I enjoyed myself. It was a lot of fun. It was a good way to kick off my time in Seattle. And actually, I was doing a little research because I was curious about haunted hotels because it's coming up on Halloween. I was remembering the haunted hotel in Los Angeles, the Cecil Hotel. It's an affordable housing complex in downtown Los Angeles, but it opened as a hotel in 1924, but it declined during the Great Depression. There were some renamings of it, but the Cecil Hotel, it is reportedly very haunted, and it's got all sorts of different stories around it and stuff. So I was thinking about that, and then I found a website that is a sort of combo, more of a theatrical kind of escape room. It's a restaurant, and it's horror themed. It's called Escape Hotel, a fictional hotel, a real place, a surreal experience. The description is an exclusive, immersive world where escape rooms become theater, live actors, story-driven encounters, twisted elegance, and fine dining. Check in if you dare. That just sounds like a very interesting thing to do. I know a few years ago when Disney World, they had the hotel, the Galactic Star Cruiser, and that just that idea of combining sort of theater and a hotel stay was really interesting to me, but unfortunately they closed it down. So this thing seems to be probably the closest thing that I can think of. I might even make a special trip out there just to check it out. If any listeners have done it before, the Escape Hotel in Los Angeles, let me know. Tell me how it was. It's in Hollywood. It's on Hollywood Boulevard. Pretty cool. Definitely want to check it out. So that was the new thing that I tried before I moved on to my time at the show. So on day one, the first thing I did, kind of got my lay of the land, but we had Dan Paladin last year, sort of an interview with him on the show. And I just wanted to, check in with him, see what's going on, say hello, just talk a little. So I went over by the booth, and I didn't record the conversation, but we just basically shot the breeze for about an hour and a half, just about nothing in particular. I did have a couple of questions around the games and around prototyping Dan Paladin of the Behemoth. Maybe you're familiar with Castle Crashers or Alien Hominid or Battle Block Theater. They just got done with Painter Boss Paradise, which is an update to Castle Crashers, where I think Dan redid all the artwork for all the different characters. But one other cool thing that this does is it allows you to create your own characters. I just purchased a brand new laptop. Since I saw it was on sale, I picked it up, the upgrade for Painter Boss Paradise. So I'm going to check it out and see what that's all about, because it looks like it's a very simple way that they show you how to animate characters. It's like they're different frames, and then you put the different drawings that you want in the different frames to make them, I guess, move. So it looks pretty interesting. That just came out, I believe, mid-August. He said that they are trying to figure out the next thing, and they go through sort of a prototyping process. It seems like it's more of an informal process, and if we have Dan on the show, hopefully coming up this year or maybe early next year, he can explain specifically the process if he so desires. But my understanding of it, it's basically everyone there just builds what they think the next thing is. They noodle around with it. People try it. If there's a lot of interest in it, they work on it further. He told me about, so Castle Crashers, before it was actually Castle Crashers, was one lower tier game, but everyone had so much fun with it. It was called Dad and Me, which was about a serial killer father and his son who was going around beating up all the neighbor kids. And the boss fights would be with bullies or whatever. And there were some tough boss fights in there. But that was kind of where the idea started to do a side-scroll and beat 'em up instead of like a run and gun like Alien Hominid was. So then they moved on to that. I think that when they were working on it, they were going to have different fighter types, but as it turned out, they just went with all knights, and because, looked pretty cool. So between Dan and Tom, I believe they did it in Flash. Got a lot of people in the office excited about it, so that's when they went into full gear onto Castle Crashers. So they built that out. Yeah, originally they jokingly named it Ye Old Side Scroller. I would have pronounced it Ye Oldie, because that's just me. But anyway, Ye Oldie Side Scroller. So that's sort of a background on that. But he was telling me about how now the process has changed a little bit. They're working on, I guess it's sort of a design kit kind of thing where you've got a lot of interchangeable parts that allow you to build a game. Since they don't use Flash anymore, they use other things. It's an interesting thing. Hopefully we can have Dan on and maybe he can explain a little bit more about that. But like I said, we spent a lot of time kind of talking about what was going on in each of our lives and stuff. I gave him one of the podcast shirts, a Too Vague podcast shirt. So hopefully that's enough of a bribe to get him to appear on the show one of these days. But that was a good way to start the show, was just catching up and talking with Dan. They're just playing around with different things, and they don't know exactly what they're going to put out yet. But as soon as they figure it out, they'll let us know. So after that, I decided to continue my t-shirt distribution. I went over to Aron Co. They brought Pizza Bandit back to the show, and they had made some major improvements to that in the gameplay. I think they're in early access now, so if you like that kind of third-person shooter with overcooked type of mechanics, check it out. It looked beautiful. I dropped off a t-shirt for him, and then I stopped by the Imaginary Game Studios booth to drop off t-shirts for Erik and Christian. While I was over at the Imaginary Game Studios booth, I had a chance to check out the latest Rogue Climber demo, which was a little bit different than last time. Last year, it was sort of a kind of thing where you're jumping from platform to platform and trying to get as high as you could. This time, it was more of a cohesive level from end to end, where you were learning about what sort of powers you'd be able to do and what you're picking up. And I had a lot of fun with it. It was very cool. Check that out. I'm not going to say, well, I'm probably going to say it a whole bunch more times, but all the links to all these items for Steam are going to be in the show notes. So if you're interested in anything, and I'm also going to put in, if at all possible, the trailers for them as well. But anyway, that was cool. Reconnecting with Christian. Erik wasn't there, but Christian and his girlfriend were both there. And we went out to dinner for day 3 and just kind of chilled out. And it was really cool reconnecting with him and finding out what was going on there. Actually, let me read the description of Rogue Climber. according to Steam. You've only got a short time to climb. An army of enemies and traps are waiting to stop you. Manage your equipment, hone your build, and master your platforming technique to climb higher than anyone before you. You think you've got what it takes? I don't think so. That is the game. I believe it's in early access now, so check it out. Someone just jumped out at me as I was walking around. This sounds very suspicious, but no, they saw me walking by and they said, "Hey, have you checked out this game?" And there was this game called Ascent Rivals. You're kind of in a race. You're flying around, going around a track. It's got a very Episode 1 racer kind of look to the ships. There are 2 different engines. The engines are controlled by tank controls. So each one of your thumbsticks control where your power is with your engine. Really kind of cool and very intuitive, at least it was for me as far as racing around the tracks and so on. Most of what I was focused on while I was playing this demo was the racing portion of it, but there's also weapons that you'll be able to use in a Mario Kart sort of way. It really reminded me a lot of a game that was at this place called Battletech Center back when I was in high school, early college. It was the early days of VR, but this was an immersive experience. You sat in a pod, and it was called Battletech because they had the Battletech robots. Once that got a little more popular, they came out with Red Planet, which is the one that I liked. They even had a training video that had sort of a star-studded cast. I don't know how star-studded you would really consider it, but Judge Reinhold, Cheech Marin, Weird Al Yankovic was in it too. And then a couple of people that you'd go, "Oh yeah, I know that guy from that movie." This is not about Red Planet. This is about Ascent Rivals. I didn't even know about this game. I had so much fun with it. I can't wait to check it out on Steam. Let me read the description. A brutal race to the death. Players assemble ships out of scraps in an effort to gain an edge in a death race where anything goes in order to claim victory. Some do it for the adrenaline, others for fame. Some do it for a shot at escaping poverty, and the majority to watch the ensuing chaos. Key features, dual engine, as I mentioned, the twin stick handling, drive to survive, competition, stakes, tuning your ship. This is all stuff that's very standard, I would say, in any kind of racing game. Oh, they've got a planned release date of 2026, but they've got a play test available now. Check out their website, and you can join their Discord. They seem to be very active. I believe they have little races occasionally on there, too. So if you like any kind of spaceship or racing game, definitely check out Ascent Rivals. I'm hoping it will work on my Steam Deck, but we'll see. It hasn't been rated for compatibility yet, but like I said, we'll see. So yeah, definitely check out Ascent Rivals. Really cool. A lot of fun. Sort of a surprise for me. So it was one of my favorite games at the show too. I just enjoyed so much playing it, even though it was a very short period of time. Next, I went to the SAN Sound booth. They're a company that is making quality, earbuds that take advantage of sort of a spatial kind of setup. Normally your earbuds, you just stick them in your ear and it doesn't really give you necessarily a sense of things that are behind you versus things that are in front of you. Generally, it can give you side to side, like if you move your phone around sometimes when you're listening to something, like an iPhone, for example, and you have your earbuds or iPods, whatever they're called, whatever, your iBuds. When you have those in there, with those, you can move the phone around and the sound changes depending on where that is. This is different because it's more of your environment. It's not where the location of your phone that changes the earbuds. It is where you are in the gaming environment. So this company is making a set focusing on gaming, game earbuds. It was a little bit tricky to hear on the floor because it was very loud, but I tried it later and it is better than normal earbuds, I will say, as far as sound quality. I'm a little spoiled because I use my studio headphones and it's definitely not comparable to that, but as far as earbuds, lightweight, they are trying to get a lower price point on these. Right now, they've got a couple models. They got the gaming ones, whereas I got the Universal. I got the Quantum style ones, which they basically gave me a demo copy of so I could check them out and talk about it on the show, which I'm doing right now. A little bit too techie as far as trying to get them connected. I finally did get them connected after some noodling around. They gave me a connection box, so it was sort of a dongle, and it will allow multiple people to share the connection to something. So that's kind of cool. But yeah, if you're interested in any quality earbuds or you just want to check them out, go ahead to their website. I'll include that in the show notes. Next, I stopped by. It was a smaller booth, but it was called Starcade Factions. And they had this game that was sort of a turn-based strategy kind of game taking place on hexes with various ships. And I didn't spend a lot of time playing it there, but right now they're in the middle of sort of a beta test, and they have a version that on the iPhone. So I ended up downloading Test Flight, which is an Apple product that allows companies to do things like have testing cycles for products before they release them. So I was able to install Starcade Factions. Played it for about an hour. In its basic form, I can see where it's got promise as far as that kind of game. Player versus player. The company Starcade Arcade, it's okay, but I think it needs more depth to the gameplay. You can pick one of 3 factions to play as, and they've got their different ships with how they function. It randomizes the quote-unquote map that you're playing on for different challenges, different obstacles. Each map has sort of a different modifier or bonus, like certain units will get increased speed or extra damage, or those are just examples, but they have a version that's even a board game. Yeah, I mean, check it out if you like that kind of turn-based strategy. But like I said, very basic at this stage, but kind of cool. So next, I went to sort of an interview/demo of a game called Rollergirl. Rollergirl was a Indie Cup contestant. Eek. This says Indie Cup Ukraine 24, the future of Ukrainian independent games is being born under bombs. Yikes. Check out the Indie Cup website, but one of the contestants in that contest was a game called Rollergirl. The whole concept revolves around rollerblading in a small hometown. One of the main creators of this game, her name is Indigo, and she's one of 7 developers that created Rollergirl, a team out of Toronto called Pushing Vertices. It's based on Indigo's small town life in Canada. This game is very beautiful looking. One of the things about the game that is sort of an interesting feature is that the music is what changes the environment. So if you listen to one of the playlists on your little MP3 player or whatever, it will change the weather, which is an interesting thing. I didn't have a lot of a chance to play around with that part of it, but I did get to play a lot of very interesting rollerblading around. It had some missions and things that you had to find along the way. To me, it was very basic. As far as the kind of game that I like, I would like there to be a little more action, but this is more cozy based and it's more focused on some sort of a narrative as opposed to what I like. Instead of just rollerblading around, casually, I want to do some tricks. I want to do stuff like in Thirsty Suitors. I think I talked about that early on. You had a basic skateboarding style game, and you could do the same with your rollerblades too. And I think it would have made the game a little bit more advanced, but I think it would have appealed to a broader audience. But like I said, I think this is focused more on the narrative. It was a lot of fun for what it was. Rollerblading in a small town, I believe it was Belleville is what you were saying. And I what did see in the game, there was one of those water towers, and I'm not sure if I'm pretty sure she got it. But I told Indigo that she should put Save Ferris on the big water tower thing, but she probably won't. Maybe she has to get it by people on her team. But anyway, yeah, it was a lot of fun, and glad I checked it out, and I look forward to seeing the full product once it finally comes out. And then the last game that I saw on the first day of PAX was Borderlands 4. Stood in line for that. I don't know what else to say about it other than it's Borderlands. I mean, my favorite Borderlands was Borderlands 2, and that was quite a while ago. And tried 3, didn't get into it. I did try Tiny Tina's, the one that was sort of Dungeons and Dragons themed, but it didn't grab me. like Borderlands 2 did, and this one didn't either. They were playing it on some high-end machines, and the graphics seemed to be, I think one of the things about the uniqueness of Borderlands was sort of the cell shading. And it looks like they kind of ditched that. It's got too much in the way of realism and things like the sky and the scenery, instead of making it more like a comic book, which is kind of what I think of. The gameplay, solid. It's just like if you like Borderlands, you'll like Borderlands 4. And I think you'll have fun playing it with your friends. It seems like a solid game. I don't know what kind of hardware they were running on. I know it was just released, and people have been having problems with their graphic settings and having performance issues. I don't know how it plays on the consoles, so I don't know to speak to that, but I know people with PCs are not, it takes a lot of advantages of the high-end graphics cards, and not everyone has that. So, but we'll see. I'm sure it will be fixed and corrected going forward. So, also they had this Ripper Rage Room thing where you could wait in line and use one of a number of weapons to destroy things in a big room, which is loud. Even, as I was walking around, you could always hear what's going on in the Ripper Rage Room and glass breaking and clanking and stuff. But let's move on. We've got a bonus for day one. And that bonus is we're going to talk a little bit about 2 reviews. This is to kind of tie in with the turn-based sort of theme I saw with Starcade Factions. But I don't know if you ever heard of Worms Armageddon. It was a game that came out. I had it on the Dreamcast, which was, I believe, released sometime in 2000. But I know that friends of mine had really loved this game. It is a game where you play worms and they have weapons and they fight it out, essentially. It's a turn-based strategy developed and published by Team 17. Each team starts with a sequence and you have a certain amount of time to move, and also all sorts of weapons that you can find as you go along. It's not a game that you would play by yourself. And, this is a re-release of the game, sort of a remaster, I guess. Like I said, I used to like it. It got a new coat of paint, same general idea. They've got 55 weird, wonderful weapons like they did before. They also had this little timeline bit in it where it shows you sort of a history. It gives some behind the scenes about how the game came to be, how it was developed. For those who are not familiar, this turn-based, it's a 2D sort of presentation. The characters are very cartoony looking. They're worms, duh. What essentially happens is they move and then they shoot something, right? A weapon, anything that they have, depending on your enemies, where they are in the environment. You either move towards them or move away from them. There are different items that appear on the map that you can get that will give you different weapons to use along the way. When I had this on the Dreamcast, I used to have lots of fun with people, but playing it by yourself is not something that I would find fun. You can also play this new version, I believe, online, which is cool. But to me, it is a game that you play with friends and you devote a set amount of time to. It's not a game that you just play by yourself. If you like those games back in the day, or you're looking for an experience that's sort of a throwback, check out Worms Armageddon. The problem for me is it's not really brand new. It doesn't feel brand new. But if you're in that nostalgia sort of mode, definitely check it out and purchase it. And then the second bonus review we have here, it's a game that's called Wargroove 2. It is a turn-based tactics game that is a sequel to Wargroove by Chucklefish and Robotality. I don't know if you've ever played any games that are turn-based like Advance Wars back in the day with your old Nintendo handhelds or older systems, but essentially it is a move on the map with your different units and try and do whatever you have to do, be that defend, be that eliminate your enemies. You control a certain number of units, but as you progress through the story and unlock different areas, it kind of takes you through the different units that you find and how you utilize them. It's primarily a single player campaign, which is divided into a prologue for the tutorial, and then 3 different campaigns focusing on story elements. I believe 1 for each of the factions, and the final bit is what connects all the stories together. Let me just say, I played it on iPad. So this is the mobile version that just came out. It's called Wargroove 2 Pocket Edition. It's getting decent Metacritic scores, but to me, it's one of those games that a turn-based strategy game has to either get me with the story or get me with a diversity of units. And this is pretty standard gameplay. There's nothing really super brand new here, but some people like that kind of game. As far as strategy games are concerned, I prefer more of a real-time strategy kind of thing as opposed to turn-based. The real-time strategy game that I always loved was Dune 2000 or Dune 2, and that had all the different factions like your House Ordos and Atreides and Harkonnen. You picked one of those, and they had different units and things, but the clock was always running, right? Well, in this case, you distribute your units, move your units, and then the other person does theirs. The one that I was comparing it to was a series called Advance Wars, and I remember playing that on the Game Boy Advance. Advance Wars had more of a kind of an army theme. It was very distinct. When you attacked units, you'd have a split screen where the left side was your units and the other side was the enemies, and it would show you an attack sequence that was sort of a graphic representation of what it would look like for the battle. Invariably, some of the units were left over, and then you could progress from there. This Wargroove is the same way. It's an Advanced Wars that has more of a fantasy theme. Different characters that you play have different super moves that can help you out of certain situations. The story, pretty generic. I played it for about 2.5 hours. I don't think I'll continue, but if you like that kind of game, again, turn-based strategy kind of games, you may want to check it out. Either the pocket version or the computer version. Wargroove 2 is on the Switch, it's on Windows, it's on Xbox, and now just got released on the Android and the iOS, which is where I played it on. So if you like that kind of game, check it out. And so that's it. Those are my reviews. The next episode will focus on day 2. I had a very cool interview with someone from the International Games Development Association Foundation. Thank you so much for joining us on this week's episode of the Too Vague Podcast. Stay tuned next week for day 2 of PAX. Have a wonderful day. Bye.